If you're an occupational therapist who feels like you should have it all figured out by now, but don't, you're not alone. Welcome to the OT Coaching Confidential. This podcast is a little different to most. Each episode is a real mentoring conversation with an occupational therapist somewhere in Australia, navigating their own professional growth. I'm Elise Svensk, a paediatric OT and founder of the OT Coach Australia. And this week I'm joined by Marie, an occupational therapist working in the private mental health space after many years in hospital and community mental health roles. In this conversation, we explore the realities of transitioning into private practice, navigating the business side of therapy, managing admin and financial systems, and figuring out what sustainable clinical work looks like when you're working independently. Now let's get started. Welcome, Marie. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, tell us a little bit about you and your OT journey. How did you get to where you are today?
It's been a long journey. I've been an OT, I think, for 15 years, but I think I was just hearing your pod the other day where we all kind of sit on that 15 years between about 13 and 16.
Isn't it
But anywhere
weird?
between that.
Just spend this whole time being
Uh,
like, oh, I was on a pod last year and they called me a mid-career therapist. And I was like, oh, I guess I am. Like, I didn't identify as that, but maybe that is me.
Makes you feel really old. So I started off, I had 1 year in a hospital, just kind of going to all the different wards. But I always knew I wanted to do mental health. So I did that year and then weaseled my way into the mental health unit and got a senior job there pretty quickly and stayed there for a while. And then that hospital shut down. So I got moved to a community mental health team, which I really enjoyed. And then kind of moved further up north from that clinic to another one. And I did a secondment at one stage as well to a youth team, which I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed working with young people. And that team was a lot smaller, a lot of autonomy, and maybe not as much acuity and risk. And then I had 2 kids and moved down south of where we were and decided to have a complete change from mental health back into physical kind of OT, which I love. But again, just always knew I wanted to be back in mental health. I would often sit with the physical health patients talking about their mental health.
Funny.
And so I just decided to contract to a company in mental health kind of private practice. Did that for about a year and then just thought, I may as well be doing it on my own. So I made that shift about a year ago. And that was quite a nice transition because I just took over the office rent. So I didn't actually have to move places. Everything was kind of already set up. I was allowed to keep my clients, which was really amazing. Very grateful for that. And so that was quite a smooth transition. But the things that I struggle with the most are probably admin tasks because I'll always prioritize people over admin. And just the business side of things, really, because you don't know what you don't know, all the numbers.
Absolutely. And that smooth transition, as much as it would have been great clinically, probably not as great as a new business owner because you didn't have a stop-start time or a lot of headspace to really intentionally set things up, which I could imagine could be really tricky in the mental health space where actually there's a fair chunk of like admin type processes you have to really heavily think through because your admin management's quite hard in this space because your clinical load is quite a challenging workspace to be in. So, following up outstanding payments, getting service agreements, like all that other stuff, I'd imagine is quite complex and tricky to get done.
Yes. Yeah. And definitely for my brain type, it is. And I think the other thing that I really have struggled with is doing government for so long, you don't ever have to worry about money.
I was literally thinking that as you were saying about going into that contracting role, because it probably would have felt great, right? Flexibility, autonomy, getting to do what you wanted to do. At that stage, it felt great because it felt like you're making heaps of money. But then when you suddenly have all those other expenses and actually go, oh, this is my full-time job now, I've got to be so much more intentional with how I'm spending my time.
Yes. And that is hard. It is hard to ask people for money and to make those transactions. And then it is also really hard to manage my time and to have good boundaries in terms of schedule.
I suppose plus side for you, though, you would have very good professional boundaries in terms of risk management. Like a lot lot of those other challenges that sometimes we have when we move into the private space, that would be
Yeah.
probably quite strict for you because you know it so well and you've got that clarity around there. So I guess what if we start there? If you think about that and then think about the admin element that goes alongside of it, like just having the headspace to it, you could probably come up with ways as to how you get your service agreements signed and payments sorted easier, because I'm sure you had to do risk assessments with clients when you're in health and you had to do hard things, right? Things that were uncomfy and that we didn't really like, but you got good at that stuff. What would that
Yeah.
look like if you thought about it in that way?
I think that would be a lot easier to think about it in that way. And I am pretty good with my service agreements, getting those signed, and payments aren't too bad. The NDIS payments have been working quite well. Most of my clients that are NDIS are plan managed, and that's quite smooth. So I don't really have a problem there. There's a couple that are self managed that need a bit of prompting.
Have you got their credit card details on Halaxy? Because you are using Halaxy.
Yeah. So for my Medicare clients, so Medicare and private clients, I give them the option. And what I find, particularly in this space, is not everyone wants to store their
Yes,
credit
I
card
bet.
payments. Yes, even if it is safe and secure. So I
Yeah.
give them the option of doing that, and maybe 50% take me up on that, and that's
Yeah.
great. And then there's others who just like to either I'll send them the invoice. So maybe
Mhm.
people who get dropped off by a parent and the parent doesn't stay, then I'll send the invoice to them. And that has also worked pretty well, except for one client. So I have a lot of difficulty with one. And so that has taught me a lot about how to manage that. And so having that rule of trying to pay on the day and making sure they pay before the next appointment. So another
Yeah.
appointment doesn't get booked until they've paid that one. So there's never been a backlog in that sense.
That's pretty good though. That's a great starting point. Are they booking in for regular appointments or are they booking in when they want to? What does that look like for you?
Most of the time, so there's a few clients that will have a regular time slot. So they want every fortnight at this time. And that's great. So that gives me a little bit of structure and gives me an idea of how to plan my days, especially if I'm traveling to the next kind of town. But the others will kind of come in and they'll book the next one at that appointment. I do try and encourage at least 2 in advance, and then they can change it if they want to. But I find that works quite well. I have with a few people booked kind of 4 or 5 in advance, but I find they just end up getting changed. So I think
and
2 is
not
good.
worth it. And what about, are you using in Halaxy the self-booking option where there's the portal and they could get themselves in and book and find a time?
I'm not.
But
And I
fair.
do wonder if that is just me being a bit of a controlling.
100% on board with this. So I've only started doing it now. I couldn't have done it with my clinical caseload. But I wonder whether it's a decent option with some parameters around it, right? So you're sending them the link when they're ready to book those next set of appointments and you tell them what to book, or you're still doing it in session. But being intentional is not just available for everybody, and it's not, they come in without you knowing who they are. Like, we're not offering it that way. It's a private booking link that you give to them, but you've already put the parameters as to your availabilities, and you can actually be relatively strict with it. Like, you have to approve the booking. It doesn't just automatically get approved. There's bits and pieces there as well you can do, but that could be helpful to just decrease a piece of that. And the other thing I was thinking, just because I play in Halaxy all the time, you can send a text message with the invoice link to it as well. So when you do that, then they can put their credit card details in and pay it directly by that way. So Halaxy doesn't store the card in that regard. So some of those ones who don't love paying or having the card's details being stored, that might be an option for them too. But I was wondering, maybe you even need to think something like, but if you don't pay by next time, we will have to have card details stored, or you will have to get this link sent, and that payment will have to be paid by the end of the day.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Now, you may not have heard me say, but I've said on previous pods, thinking about the difference between you and the business. So this probably is the other. Previously you had health, that it's just a health rule. That's just what we have to do.
Yes. Yeah, you hide behind that.
Yeah. Now we're going to hide behind it's the business. This is the business rule. It is tricky when it is just you, but it is a good way to put barriers in place, and it, safeguards us in the future if we did put somebody else on, or if you got admin to support you, anything like that, to go, these are our business rules. Like, the business rule is you need to pay, or you can't have another appointment.
Yeah, I'll definitely take that on board. Thank you.
Tell me a bit about the clinical pathways. So you've got some privates, you've got NDIS. Are they seen on the same frequency? Is therapy look similar, different? Like, what does it look like between those different scopes of work?
So my NDIS clients, I have a mix of ongoing therapy clients, which are again about every fortnight to monthly appointments. And a couple of them, maybe there's some MDT meetings in there as well. Then I also have some FCA, which I've taken on again. I had a little bit of a break from that. And I have noticed since I took those on, I don't want them and I'm annoyed at myself. So I think for me, I have to really perhaps stop doing those. They're not my forte. I'm way too detailed. I don't ever get big chunks of time to do report writing. So I really struggle with that. Again, my brain type just does not like sitting down for that long. And I also just don't believe in the whole process. Like I don't value
I'd
the whole
agree.
thing.
I think that
So,
sounds great. But, we know that space is changing anyway with the support needs
yes,
assessment. So there's
yes.
probably
I
not
was
a lot of
hoping.
benefit pushing that as a heavy stream. But I just don't think you've got time to be running them anyway. Like you're only working, 3 days a week at the moment, wanting to work clinically 3 days. Carrying any level of caseload gives you pretty much no time to get those functionals done. Like it doesn't stop
Yeah.
you from doing them internally for your active clients, but potentially not as an external pathway in.
That's what I've thought. And so I have kind of taken on a couple that I already, maybe they're an updated one that I did a year and a half ago. Maybe they're already active with me. And then there was a couple of new ones which I've said, sure, send the referral through. But I'm actually thinking about then emailing and saying, look, I've reviewed my
And don't have
current
capacity.
caseload and
Yep.
I'm just not going to have capacity for that in the hope that it will then change to the needs assessment soon. And I actually am working a little bit more now just because my husband's got a break in work and doing things a little bit differently. So I've picked up more hours and he's kind of managing the home situation. But I'm still conscious of not taking too many clinic clients on because
Yep.
then how do I kind of go back to
Tease
the
it
2 or
back.
3 days?
Absolutely.
That will be
Although
hard.
I guess in saying that, you're not booking people in. So say in PEDS, we would book in for a term, like you're pre-booking
Yeah.
so far in advance. So if we were to go to using that timetable, that active Halixy timetable, when they go to
Yep.
book, that day is just not available as of whatever week. Like you wouldn't even need to talk to them about it.
Yeah.
They'd just think it was you were busy.
Yeah, and it is pretty normal where I live that you have to wait for a long time to see
Mm.
a therapist, particularly in the mental health space. So that would be fine. And also, a lot of my NDIS that are fortnightly can go to monthly, and that would
Mm.
save them some funding and they can have longer appointments if needed. But I am filling those days a lot with a few casual shifts at the local hospital, which I really enjoy. It's much more
Mm.
social. Financially, it's not worth it, but
Yep.
in terms of my mental health, it is worth it. I
Absolutely.
love
But
it. It's
also
a
the
great
connection,
job.
right? Like having
Yeah,
that connection, you're working in a lonely space with big things and not necessarily having those people around you to just go, man, that was a big day today. Let's just have a little chat to someone. So, of course, that makes perfect sense to think about doing that. But maybe it comes
yeah,
back to thinking intentionally across you and your husband. What do we want life to look like? And what financially does things need to look like? What do I want my flexibility to be like? So I imagine those
yeah,
casual days are good, but you don't have the flexibility. If the kids need you or if something else happens, you can't just dip in and dip out as much as you probably can with the private work. So again, weighing that up, big picture, and just having
yeah,
agreement. Like you said, your husband's available at the moment. I can pick that stuff up. But that again is where you've got that flexibility because you don't have that rigid set caseload. So you can sort of dip in and dip out as you want to.
exactly.
When you think about like the work creep and the things that are feeling a bit overwhelming in this space, is it mostly the admin side of things or is it a bit of the clinical load as well?
Oh, it can ebb and flow a little bit because it will depend on the caseload at the time. It can depend on my stress levels outside
Mm.
of work. So at the moment, the clinic work the client time is good. I'm enjoying it, but it is the admin tasks. And it's so billing and invoicing, I find fine because I use
Mm.
Halexi and I feel like that's quite streamlined. It's more emails, it's more making sure I finish watching the PD that I've paid for that I was meant to watch online and never did.
Mm.
I got audited this month, of course. So
Oh,
doing
bam.
that,
Yeah. That
yeah.
really makes you think strongly about all of those things, doesn't it?
It's more those bits and pieces. And I just find that those things hang over me. I can't really even tell you what they are. But things like I want to finish writing my policy. So I wrote them early on and I
Mm.
don't even think I really finished them, but I haven't opened them back up to have a look at them. My things on Halexi are quite up to date. So my consent form, that's That's good. So all the things attached to that are fine, but it's
Mhm.
on like my business policies. I
Yep.
find it just
Yeah.
hovering there.
It's that working in the business versus working on the business time.
Yes.
But I
Yeah.
think that that's always difficult when you don't have a clean reason as to why you're going to get it done. And that's like because you didn't have that solid transition in, there was no big pressure to get it done good, proper, done and get it out of the way. So I've just onboarded a VA that forced me to update a lot of this stuff, having like a hard, fast line of
Yes.
like potentially for you, an easy one might be I'm hosting a student. You could do a student placement and that gives you a line in the sand to go, oh, I've got to have my policies written for them because otherwise I don't know that there'd be enough pressure for you to do it. Like at this stage,
Yeah.
we're not
Yeah.
going through enough other things to go, hey, let's do this thing that is so low in dopamine hit and has no bearing on my day-to-day work.
Yes, I think you've picked up on my brain type. I need that deadline.
Mm.
Without the deadline, it's not getting done, but it will just sit there in the back of my mind and
Yep.
hover over me. And I have thought about a VA. I don't think I am ready yet or need one yet. I
Yep.
have thought about a student because I've thought of lots of student projects.
Mhm.
And I actually did meet one of the local uni kind of student coordinators. So I was going to reach out to her soon, but she even agreed. She's like, probably need another year. And that was about 3 months ago. And then the other thing I'd thought about as well is getting someone on board to, they contract to me or employee. But again, since I reached out to you, I think I've gone off that idea again.
I mean, I don't know why. It seems like such a stable space to be hiring in at the moment. But I think that's probably really fair. All those thoughts are really, really valid. You don't need to be overly prepped to be take on a student. You are a brilliant clinician. You've got wonderful experience. So hosting an early years student would be a lot easier, a later years student, a lot harder. Project work takes a lot of brain space. So bringing somebody in and giving them a project, that's where potentially you're not settled enough and that might take up too much space just yet. But one that does part, that could be fine. That could be really lovely. But I don't think you necessarily need another year. Like clinically, things are rolling. There's things that they're coming in, they could walk in tomorrow and you've got caseload ready for them to sit in and watch. So that is doable. But maybe you would look more specifically. When we used to host students, we would look at their placement timetables and actually pick which times would work best for us. So I've got my big calendar behind me and I used to go through and block out all of the different years placements and then figure out which one aligned best with my life, work life, all of our transitions and things like that. So for you, you don't really want one that crosses over school holidays because you want to have a low school holiday period. Like that type of stuff is the things you'd be thinking of. Then you pick a period that works more effectively for you. But that also just gives you that line in the sand of, oh, I'll get all these other things done at the same time.
And then it also depends on the type of student you get as well.
Yes, that is the other challenge, that it's not always the most amazing fit, but sometimes you can have that connection with the uni that they know, particularly if you can only offer a part-time placement, that only some students want a part-time placement. And usually there's a good reason why they want a part-time placement, like they're holding a job or they're a parent or other things like that. So they've already sort of screened them a little bit for suitability. So that might be something to think about there as well. How do you go with your week-to-week stuff? So if we're working, like now that you've popped in those couple of casual days, does that mean everything else blows into a weekend or a nighttime, or is it quite manageable?
Oh, not so much. I think I definitely made that mistake early on of just taking anyone and taking any work and working, coming home, getting the kids and then setting up telehealth and seeing someone over telehealth and then putting the kids to bed and then doing the notes and all that back and forth again just doesn't work for me. So I've tried to cut that down. I'm really trying to do mostly school hours with maybe one later shift per week.
Yep.
And that again works quite well. So yeah, not spending a lot of time during the week at night time. Oh, maybe I am actually the last couple of weeks, but I think with the audit, that's probably added to
probably
it.
fair. Yep.
Yeah, often it will be. So I use my Remarkable for notes. I have no idea what other things I can do on the Remarkable. It's on my to-do list to figure out what else it can help me with. But for now, I do my notes and then send them
from there
straight to my account and upload them. Yeah, so that helps
Are
me
you
a lot.
uploading it as a PDF?
Yes.
That's okay. Like sometimes people transfer it back to then typed. We did that for a while. We were using an app that then I'd email it, then I'd have to sit and rewrite it because it wouldn't transfer my writing.
Yes.
But have you looked at any AI tools or anything like that to assist with speeding that process up at all?
Yeah, so down here we actually got a bit of a grant, I think it's called, for some AI or some business kind of digital
Literacy
support.
stuff.
So I took that on board and I did have someone help me with my website, go over that. And then I also am connected with someone to do with AI. So I've had one appointment and we've considered a couple of different things, and then I'm meeting her again in about a month, actually.
Is
So
she
I'm
looking at
hoping,
like software stuff, like stuff that can integrate into your client software? Halaxy's actually
yes.
just launched its own AI within Halaxy as well.
I've seen that, but then I know that some people had troubles with the Heidi integration. So I was
Yeah.
being wary of that and
Yeah.
waiting to see. So I kind of follow the threads and see what everyone's saying about
Yeah.
it first before I try it. I did notice that it does a summary,
Mm.
which is actually really helpful.
Yeah, I was thinking that's where it could be really handy, like to summarize what you've popped in there. What about, so obviously there's Heidi, there's Everbility, there's different bits and pieces like that. So for those who don't know, Remarkable is a tablet. It's a really cool tablet, right? Like it's pretty much you just handwrite whatever. If you're a handwriter and you're somebody who references handwritten work, the Remarkable tablet's perfect because you really can't do anything else in there, can't get distracted, can't check your emails, can't lose things. Like if you're somebody who takes really solid notes, it can be tricky, I guess, that you're double handling a little bit. So you're not really, because you are PDFing it, so it's fine. But that is probably where the AI might be assistive in that regard.
Yeah.
And maybe that's where Halaxy's AI could be helpful, that it could pull that progress report for you from the clinical notes that you've uploaded in there potentially. But we'll just have to see, is that what they're looking at? Or are they looking more at like Microsoft Copilot and things like that? What sort of AI are they talking to you about?
No, more like we talked a lot about Chat GPT and how to make that work for if I'm, preparing sessions or trying to think of different ways to approach things, making handouts, things like that. And then we did talk a little bit about some of the notes, like the Heidi and things, but we didn't get far with that part.
Okay. Have you started using Chat at all?
I do use Chat GPT.
We call it the Oracle on the big podcast. So we're using it a fair chunk. But I think it took me a long time to understand how to use it for my brain. Do you feel like you're using it effectively, or are you just using it for little bits and pieces?
I feel like I could be using it more effectively. And then if you have the paid version, it's even better. So that's what she was encouraging me to look into. But I haven't got the paid one yet. Have you got it?
So I've got the paid version. So mine has all my brain projects, right? So it's got so many different things. But one of the benefits for me, so thinking about those policies and procedures, chuck it all in there. When you feel like it, it's half done and you just tidy it up and you pull it out and it's done. So for projects, for people like us that need things to just get moving, but if I just dump it in there and then I can come back to it, it's pretty much done. I find that so much easier. So I used to find it really hard to initiate very boring activities like that, where now I'm like, dump, 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 dump. Can you write something like this? No, not like that. Can you add these things in? And the benefit of you having such solid clinical experience, you know what you need it to tweak. And I'm sure you've found this previously, like when you've had students and things like that, it's way easier if someone else does the bulk of the work. And then you're like, that's not quite where I was heading it. Where Chat's like, thank you. Let me rewrite it exactly how you thought it would look. So I find getting that idea out so much easier, and I'm way more productive with all the other big headspacey type stuff. It can do marketing plans for you. It can help you, like if you were like, help me prioritize, what should I prioritize? It will literally prompt you like you would prompt a client.
I love that. Yeah, that will definitely work well for me. So then it will be worth it.
Yeah. So it will definitely be worth it. I also use it a lot for wording of things. So if I was struggling to, and you might be quite solid with this may not be something that you find tricky, but say you were having to word, or you had to figure out how to write that email to the person who wasn't paying you, or how you would word that text message. You could be like, this person quite unstable. I need to be careful about how I approach them. Can you practice wording for me? And it can give you language. And then you'd be like, oh, no, not like that. Okay, sorry, let me rewrite it. So the pieces, what I find being by myself, I've sort of got a built-in buddy that I can be like, what do you think about this? But what it has started to do more recently is like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's not doing a lot of no's to me. So it's not as helpful, where before it was a little bit more critical, like, no, we should probably try it this way. So that's the piece that I'm not finding as handy, but it's definitely like having a quick little brain working alongside you.
Yeah, that's what it's like. I do love it for brainstorming. I think a good example I used it for the other day was writing to a GP to express my concerns about a joint client, but I also didn't want it to say too much. I wanted to subtly get a point across without
Yep.
naming,
Directly.
blaming, shaming. And because
Yep.
I knew if the parents read it, then it could be taken the wrong way.
Yep. Yep.
And so it was quite good. I kind of said, this is what I'm thinking. What do
Mm.
you think? And then it
It's
was amazing,
amazing. Like,
honestly.
honestly, I've done similar where we've been trying to clearly articulate the level of worry we have about a presentation or something that's going on for a little person. And so I'll just say to the therapist, just dump. Don't think clinically, don't think professionally, just dump your concerns into there and see how it then summarizes it for you. Is that painting a better picture for that compared to what our little normal version of how we would write that?
Yeah.
That is so helpful. So obviously, we are being de-identifying everything that's in chat. So we're not putting any
Yes.
identifying information into there. One of the benefits of looking at something more like Everbility or Heidi or things like that is that you are able to do that more popping information in and using reports and things like that in there because it's a lot more secure. But I think for you're thinking more thought generation type stuff, and that's maybe where chat or similar. One of my colleagues has talked about Claude more recently as well. So Claude, she reckons that the language in Claude is less obvious.
Yeah,
Like,
so this person I'm meeting with has looked into Claude a lot and is apparently an expert with it now. So I'm interested to see what she has to say about that.
So my friend absolutely swears that that's what I should be using because no one would know that it was AI that was writing things.
Oh, amazing.
Interesting. I find it's so, for me to learn a new process, and I'm sure you've found this with Halixy as well, unless you know what you need it to do, it's really hard to have the time to waste in there, just stuff it around with things. The other actually really cool thing in chat is you could ask it to tell you how to use it properly. So I was just doing some website stuff. You could be in chat and say, hey, I'm trying to fix my website. This is what's happening. Screenshot, throw it in. Where do I need to go? And it'll prompt you through everything that you need to do. And it'll bring little pictures up. So same for Halixy. It's got lots of the things in there for Halixy. So say you're like trying to set this fee up, or I'm trying to set up my service agreements or online bookings. It'll take the information from the Halixy's information, but make it in a more readable version for you.
Yes, it actually did help me a lot with that when I was first setting it up. So I used it for Halexi, and then Medicare, I found it didn't know too much. It gave me misinformation about Medicare. So I've steered cleared from that.
Yep.
But then Zero as well, I find it really helpful.
It's
I
very helpful for Zero. Yes, definitely.
And I abandoned Zero for about 3 months until last night, and I jumped back on. So then I had a lot of questions, and ChatGPT definitely helped with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's just once you learn how to prompt it effectively, then it's so much more straightforward and really, really helpful. And then you start realizing the things you do need to outsource and get help for, and the stuff that you could figure out if you just had enough time and headspace for it.
Yeah.
So tell me a bit about Halixy. Are you using it? So you're not using the portal. So are you sending them the online form to add their details in and then they sign their service agreement on there? Or what's that piece look like when you're onboarding someone?
So I have 2 separate forms. I have a referral form and I send them the link and get them to fill that out. So that saves me filling it out. And that works quite well. And then once they've done that, I'll then send them the consent form, which they sign online as well. And
Service
for most
agreement?
people, this one's a consent form. The service agreement I haven't put onto Halexi yet. No, I guess the consent form and the service agreement are in one.
Yep.
And then I'm thinking of the scheduler supports, which I do separately
separate.
on paper.
Yes, which is fine. Halixy doesn't really have the capability to flex it as you need to. So it probably makes more sense to do it on paper anyway. And then you're not using the booking in, but you're using the calendar, you're invoicing through Halixy, doing all of that. Have you got it integrated with Xero or separate?
I did integrate it to start with, and then my accountant said it's actually better to not integrate it and just keep it separate. So I then go on to Xero and
reconcile manually.
Yeah, reconcile.
Yep. We did the same. Ours, because we used to use a different payment pathway. So we were using the Square tap reader, but Square would automatically take the money out. So it would never reconcile what Halixy had invoiced, what was going through with Xero. So we have Xero set up where there's rules set up in Xero. So it will automatically recognize different fees. And then you can just press okay, rather than having to manually go through. But yeah, that can be helpful to understand how both of those different processes work. Are you manually invoicing in Halixy? So flicking off the invoices at the end of the session each day? What does that sort of invoicing process look like?
I try and do it each day, so straight after the session. So if the client hasn't paid with their card or their stored card, then I just send the invoice to the plan manager or to them. And then if it's a Medicare client, they have to let me know when they've paid so I can do their Medicare rebate. So I do the Medicare rebate through Halexy, which is really easy as well.
Have you got many Medicare clients? Pretty half off.
Yeah, I've got quite a few.
Yeah. So we ended up moving away, I think, from doing our Medicare claims because it costs you that extra usage every time you're doing the Medicare claim through, and we were pushing it back. But for your caseload, I think that definitely makes sense that you can do that Medicare process. You can set that stuff all up to automatically process. Have you seen that? So you can
I've seen it.
yeah. So if they've got stored credit card details on file, you can just have it that at the end of each day, ours used to be set for 8 o'clock, and it would process automatically. And then the Medicare claim would then process automatically. So that was quite handy. It just didn't tell you if it failed the Medicare claim. So you just got to keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
Also didn't tell you if the credit card failed. So you just have to look at that. When you're in Halixy as well, have you switched on all of the little visual bits that are in there? So I'll just show you so you can see. When you go up to that little settings piece up the top there, then you flick into here and click all these to show. So invoice and send status. So that'll actually show a little airplane when the things have been sent off. It'll go green when things are paid. Your notes will tick when you've put them as published. So it's much easier to sort of look and see what's going on in there. And these little red dots are when you've got credit card details on file and it hasn't processed through.
Right. So I've got 2 of them. I just don't think I have the sending off one. So maybe
so that's quite a new one. Yeah. And then you may not have the new client icon. There's a couple of these that have come in the last little while. So just have a jump in there and see if there's anything that you need to go back and flick off. So knowing about, I guess, how to have those little bits and pieces on can be really helpful. There is a setting. Halix is a little bit tricky with this, but you can have it that it will automatically send invoices out, but unfortunately you can only do that by putting a 0 due date on it. So it's confusing for clients to receive it because the actual emails due today, but then in the body it's due in 7 days. So with your caseload, I don't know that would be particularly well received, even if you talk to them around it.
I think I set that up by accident at the start, and then I would send them the invoice myself, not realizing, and then it would send them another one, and it got quite confusing. There's still something that's happening because, I think I stopped all of that. Yeah, no, that's fine now.
I love using Halixy. At the moment, I'm finding Halixy for the funding periods isn't super helpful because it doesn't have that capacity to track the funding periods as well. But for more private participants, Halixy is a really cool option to be able to do that. The online option, again, chat should be able to teach you most of it, but you've just got to turn on your clinic location and then put your days in there. And you can actually go in and say how far in advance you want people to be able to book. So you'd only keep yours down for 2 or 3 weeks, just like you want. So there's a fair bit of capacity in there we could be looking at as well.
And then you can put a limit on how soon before the appointment.
You can have they can't book within 24 hours and that sort of thing. You just have to remember to use your non-client stuff next to it to book time out. So, those little grey bits, if you don't do that, they can just book in wherever they want on those days. But again, there are little workarounds in all of those spaces to make that not work in that same way.
I think that's what I was worried about if I wasn't organised enough and didn't block that time out.
And I thought the same thing, but I haven't found it that difficult. Plus, your guys are used to shuffling around anyway. Like you said, if you book too far in advance, they shuffle their time. So they're not expecting a hard, rigid time. So you're sort of in a nice space that you've got a bit more flexibility there too. Tell me a little bit about how you're going with tracking your money and paying yourself and all of that sort of stuff. Is that nice and settled, or is that a bit of a tricky area?
It's a bit of a tricky area. I think what I want to do is actually pay myself a wage. So set up payroll with my accountant. So that was on my list of things to do this year. He never mentioned that, but someone else I ran into at a conference mentioned that that's the best way to do it.
Because you're a company, aren't you?
Yes. I'm a
Absolutely.
Company. Yeah. So that makes the most sense to me. And then also having that super going in as well. In saying that, I am really good at putting money aside in my reserve account for tax and putting money into my super account as well. But I do have to look into different super accounts because I'm still using the one attached to my health, just the default one for health. And they have allowed you now to make your own personal contributions, but it's a bit grey in terms of, are they seen as self-contributions additional, or is it actually
a pre or post?
Yeah.
Have you seen a financial planner at all?
No, because I haven't figured out, I haven't found anyone yet. I've asked a local, we have a WhatsApp group for all the OTs in this area, and I asked if anyone's got someone they recommend, and everyone kind of said, no, we're looking for the same.
Have you ever listened to the podcast She's on the Money?
Oh, A while ago. I haven't listened recently though.
Yeah. So I feel like you and I are similar ages. I think that's a really nice spot to probably start there because it's all about like money literacy and things like that. But they have financial planners that they've sort of screened and used in that space as well. So we don't necessarily need one. A financial planner doesn't really need to get OT world, allied health world, but they do need to get your life plans and complexity of life and that sort of thing. So that might be a nice spot to look at for there. It
Yeah.
would, if you were looking more at, we want to buy, sell, get a clinic, things like that, then we'd be wanting to speak to a broker who understands allied health in a bit more detail. So there's a couple of guys that I can refer people to if they're looking for that purpose. But yeah, for the financial planner, I think it's about finding someone that talks your language, that helps you make sense of what makes sense, but then figures out how much money do I need this business to make me? So that's the piece that's tricky. A good starting point, like when we do think about this, is to think, what was I getting paid at health? Like when I was working full time, what was my salaried amount? What would that
Yeah.
look like? How do I make that? And obviously then you take the flexibility into account and all those other bits and pieces, but that at least gives us a baseline as an employee, what would I want to be taking out of here? And that can be handy. And when you do set yourself up as an employee, then you do have that regular super, but then you can choose to pay yourself extra super. Like there's so many options, but your financial planner can help you with that. And then the accountant can get it all set up for you.
Yeah. Amazing. I will definitely be looking into that. Thank you.
Yeah. One of the things though, when you do start paying yourself as an employee, you might have to look as workers' compensation as well. So just depending on how you've been set up, usually when you move to a company and you're a working director, you typically then have to pay for workers' compensation for yourself. So that is a little expense. Mine is a decent amount of money for that, but you are working in a relatively risky area. So it's probably something that you do want to have covered rather than not having it covered. The other thing that the financial planner would look at is your income protection and making sure that you've got enough income protection and all those other insurances all set up. So they'll look at super.
Yeah.
They'll be the person who'll tell you about like which super fund would make most sense for you guys, like all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, because I actually looked into my super and the income protection I had through that. And again, it was so grey as to whether or not they would actually pay it or if they were going to pay it based on just my shifts at the hospital and if it included the work that I do through the company. And I couldn't really get to the bottom of it, so I gave up and put it on my list of things to do. So,
It is a really tricky area. One of the things that they'll often talk about is until you've got X amount of years in this business, they won't take that figure into account. So particularly for the income protection, but also when you go up a bracket in your income protection to something that's more like what you're making, it costs a heap. And then you're paying that usually personally. So again, the financial planner should help you to be able to weigh that up and consider pros and cons and where that best fits. And then the accountant can help navigate that with you as well.
Amazing. Thank you.
So many things that we have to figure out, isn't it? So many different considerations and bits and pieces. And it's hard when you just want to be that clinician coming in. Now, you sort of talked about potentially looking at a virtual assistant as well. I've got a workshop. This might be worth doing further down the track once you get this other stuff sorted. It's called Getting the Admin Support That You Need. So that sort of takes you through the considerations of all of those bits and pieces. But there's a little checklist in there too that takes you through what are all the admin jobs that I'm doing, because I would dare say a fair bit of the things that you're finding overwhelming is actually clinical admin, not the business side. So like there's a big chunk of business, but it's mostly the clinical stuff that's creeping. So a VA isn't going to take that stuff off your plate.
That's what I thought. The things that I could think of, I'm like, there's not enough there. I definitely know other people in similar situation that do use a VA, but yeah, I don't know. I imagine it would be that helpful at the moment.
Yeah. And again, because you're really clinically solid, you've got good pathways getting people in, like maybe for service agreements, but you're doing that hands-on with them while you're there. Like there's not a lot of scope as to where they'd take load off you, aside from you having to tell them all the things that you want them to do. So
yeah,
it can be incredibly tricky, incredibly handy. I don't think at this point that it's the next piece of the puzzle for you, unless you were to pick up more days and get way more clinically busy. And then you're like, I'm just so busy, I don't want to do any form of admin whatsoever.
I don't think I'm going to get to that point. Hopefully not.
No. And like the things that take up time are things you like, right? Like you like marking money off and you like tracking and being like, oh, I made some money. How good is this? So if you get rid of all of the fun stuff, the things that you like doing about it, then you don't get any of that nice hit of the good stuff. Now, is there any other things that you were thinking about us chatting about today?
Not really. I think we've covered it all, to be honest. It's just a good nudge for me to actually reach out and book some of those things in, like
Yeah,
financial planner.
definitely. I wonder, you're accessing some clinical supervision, aren't you? So you've got,
Yeah.
is that regular? Is that just ad hoc?
No, that's regular. It's about once a month, every 4 to 6 weeks.
Cool. Like potentially you could take a couple of these goals. I know in mental health, clinical supervision is usually beautiful, reflective space and like nice, good supervision and, unlikely to blur into this business stuff. But I wonder if you could have a little goal of, can you just check in and check whether I've done these other things that I said I was going to do in this period of time? So that might be just the only other thing to consider, just an accountability partner. Because again,
Yes. Yeah.
time's probably just gone and we're at the end of the term and we haven't done any of these things. But if you had somebody saying, again, that need to do
Deadline.
it,
That's a great idea.
amazing. Is there anything else you want to talk about or ask?
No, the only other thing I was thinking was rather than a VA, getting a VA that's experienced with Halexi just to look over as like a one-off, just to
Yep.
see how I'm doing everything and recommend just
Absolutely.
cleaning it up a bit. I feel like there's definitely things that could be
Yeah,
improved
fantastic.
just with my usage.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you think that would be worth it?
I do. So sometimes I'll do a joint session with people and we'll go through and check how things are set up. I think for you though, like you said, thinking about a VA to do that. Now, in saying that, I paid for a VA, a random VA to go through and try and do all my like online onboarding stuff. And they did not do a better job than what I did. And like I ended up paying for 10 hours for that. So I wonder, like, it might be better off. Sometimes I'll say, pay for a session with me. We'll go through it or find someone else who use it, go through it with them. Often it's watching how they do it and going, oh, I didn't know those things existed, rather than them watching you. That's what my concern with another VA looking at it for you just as a one-off might miss what you're doing. But there's definitely a couple of people I can point you in the right direction of as well who could potentially look at doing that. Coming back and thinking about the VA piece, you would have to be very explicit about what the support is that you're wanting from it, because it could turn into this big job or a little tiny job. So you might go, I'm happy to pay for 3 hours for you to do a solid audit and get it set up properly. That's sort of where I got stuck, where then they're like, 10 hours. I'm like, mate, this is nearly done. I had one thing that I needed you to fix that I couldn't figure out. But that's what I'm finding chat way more helpful for now. But for me,
Yes, true.
I think that's tricky though. Like if you don't know what you need it to do, then you can't prompt it properly. So that's where watching somebody else to be like, they did that thing over there. Now, if you did have that session with someone, something that I have started doing with mine is I'll do it as a Zoom and record it. So then you've got it to watch back later. So that I think is really handy. The other bit that we've been doing a little bit of is Loom. So Loom can do that screen recording. So if you were working with someone who did, was able to show you all these cool features, they could just make those little mini videos that you could watch rather than trying to read the instructions or follow a big email.
Yeah, definitely learn that way more than reading.
Yes. I remember when I first started, reading the Halexi manual and being like, I don't even know what I'm reading here. Like for Medicare, I stuffed up my Medicare stuff hugely because I just misinterpreted how it was read. So I set it up completely wrong, where if I'd watched somebody else using it, I'd be like, oh no, they've said it this way, but they actually mean this thing over here. And that's what I need to do around it. So yeah, that does sound like that might be worthwhile doing. I'd say the same for either your chat or if you do end up using another AI program, that it's probably worthwhile paying to watch somebody use it so that you can see all the functionality and how they use it over just trying to figure it out for yourself, because you just don't have the headspace and time to do that.
Yeah. And then you're just not using it to its full potential.
Absolutely. And then you can't even figure out how you would set it up. Like it sounds like you're quite like me. I'm really visual. I can't just look at something and figure it out. But if I've watched somebody, I'm like, oh yeah, there was that thing. Cool. Where am I looking out for that? But if I just currently I'm trying to use Kajabi, which is our website platform.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh. And I'm like, I can't figure this out. I know this is really straightforward, but because I don't know where the things are, it's so hard for me to do this process. And because similar to you, I'm busy. I don't have hours to spend on this job here. This is a 2-second job in my head, but it's taken too long. So now it just has to stay how it is.
Yes, so true.
What's the priority? Very, very low. Okay, well, that probably brings us to the end of our conversation today. And to wrap up our session, we normally do a little bit of a note to self. So let's go back to like when you went from your contracting role to like, let's just take this all over. What might be some things you might tell yourself?
Oh gosh, I think I was so nervous back then about being on my own and managing. And I think I just catastrophized the whole thing. But actually, it's been a lot of fun to learn new things and to see how it all works behind the scenes and to not have to give such a big cut to someone else and just to have complete autonomy. I think that's what I've needed all along, just to be able to be creative. And after years of working in the government and all the red tape, just to actually be able to do things the way I want to do it. And I think that's really worked well for how I deliver a service to clients.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the best things of coming in as a very experienced therapist, that again, clinically, you've been so clear about why I'm doing what I'm doing, how I want to set these things up. I want it to work from a risk perspective. It's just those other areas that you didn't have the eyes on that stuff before, right? Like you weren't the money person before, you weren't the policy and procedure person before for that side of things, but clinically well sorted, got that all really down pat.
Yeah.
Oh, so good. Well, it's been so lovely talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us, Mary.
Thank you so much for having me.
The OT Coaching Confidential podcast exists to support occupational therapists to think clearly, feel less alone, and take meaningful steps in their work. If this conversation resonated for you, take a moment to notice what stood out. Have a think about the takeaways from this session and what you might be able to apply in your own personal or professional practice. If you'd like to keep the conversation going, head on over to the otcoach.au. Inside here, you'll find resources, workshops, trainings, lots of different things, including some new freebies that we've just set up. I've also got the OT Coach Academy, where we have the Pediatric Hub, as well as a brand new Business Owners Hub, and this will be for group practice owners to come together and share and learn. Please note that the information shared in this podcast is general in nature and is not intended to replace individualised advice. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.